What's up, guys? Rick from DFS On Demand here with your betting preview for the BMW Championship. I am sick as a dog, so I'm just going to throw up some graphics and we will talk through our the one guy that if I had to bet him, I would bet him this week, the one guy that I would stay away from, and then maybe a few matchups. Obviously, there is a hour-long betting preview that I produced for Sports Grid, which I will link in the description below if you would like to watch that for more in depth. All right, let's do it. If I was only making one bet this week, it would really have to be John Rahm. And I start with that qualifier of if I was only going to make one bet, because usually a guy that's 10 to 1 or shorter doesn't get my attention in this way. My personal preference is I would like to start my card a little bit lower, maybe 15, 16, 18 to 1, get a couple of bullets in the 20 range, 20 and 30 range, and go from there. However, when you look at Rahm at 10 to 1, I think he is fairly priced, and I think he does not come with a lot of the same knocks that you can argue about, whether it's Koepka, whether it's Rory, whether it's DJ. Rahm is really the one to me who continues to just knock on the door. His last 5 finishes have been 3rd, 7th, 11th, win, and a second place finish worldwide. He's been playing the best golf on the planet all over the planet. And he's one of these guys who, if you're going to need to be elite off the tee this week, which you might have to be, he's that guy. He's continually putting himself in a position to win, and we know that he can win. We know we can shut down these events. There's guys who continue to get here in top 5 and top 10, and they never end up closing it out. Rahm is certainly not one of those guys. We've seen him win multiple times over the last year or so. So that is, again, just if I had to fire one bet on someone, to me, I believe it is John Rahm. If I was playing a larger betting card, which I tend to do, he would be tougher to get in. I'd probably have to go 10 to 1 and then maybe start again, have a gap there, maybe go to the 40s or 50s range. But if this is the one single bet, it is John Rahm at 10 to 1. Now, my one fade this week is someone that we've heavily invested in over the course of the last few weeks, but he's starting to show a red flag, and I'll kind of talk about my strategy around this for a second. But Billy Horschel at 50 to 1. I know, and I've talked about this myself, this is kind of the time of year for Billy Horschel. He has shown us that he can get hot in the playoffs. He's playing extremely well coming into this event, but there's one big red flag that I saw last week, and that was the fact that he gains 9.7 strokes putting on the greens at the Northern Trust. That was his best putting tournament that I have on record in my database, which dates back to about mid-2016. So over 3 years, last week was his best putting tournament ever. He lost 4.5 strokes on approaches, basically the same number he lost tee to green. And it's the first time that he has lost strokes tee to green since the Players' Championship. So now we have to decide, was last week the anomaly? Was last week just an outlier and Billy's going to get back to being this great player tee to green? Or is, we certainly know he's probably not going to putt as well as he did last week, because it would be his his 2 best putting rounds ever would come back, or best 2 putting tournaments ever would come back to back, which is probably unlikely. So we know he's not going to putt as well as he did last week. If he doesn't fix the rest of his game, he's going to be in big trouble. The putter absolutely saved him last week, even just to make the cut. So this is a situation where you have to decide if you want to be early or late on a player, where if you are late on a player, you need to see him fail multiple times and then you jump off. And the same goes for when a player is playing well, like a John Rahm, for example. You don't get on John Rahm until he goes out and wins the golf tournament. Or Patrick Reed. Patrick Reed was the perfect example of this. He was knocking on the door week in, week out, just putting himself in contention. And now when he wins, his price is going to be, higher than normal on DraftKings. His odds are going to be shorter than normal. He's down to like 22 or 20 to 1, depending on where you have him. And now you're late on Patrick Reed because you waited for the win. So the when you're fading a player, the opposite thing goes into effect, right? Like if we would need to see Billy Horschel fail a few times before we hop off, and we'd be late to the game. So I would prefer to be early, which means I would prefer to take a smaller sample and go out and get. And I tend to usually do be too early, quite frankly, where I think I've missed on Rory's wins too early. I missed on Patrick Reed too early, but I'd rather be too early than too late. So I usually take a very small sample, and if this is a sign of bigger things to come for Billy Horschel, where his tee to green game might not be as sharp, his putting might need to carry him, I'm going to try to jump off right now. I see that as a red flag. So it's a little bit of a strategic situation where I'd rather be early than late, but I think it's worth discussing because that is a valid concern and a valid strategy when you're betting this week in, week out. Are you going to be the guy who misses early? Are you going to be the guy who misses late? I'd rather miss early. You usually get on the better side of the odds if you actually do hit it than paying up and missing out late. And then a couple of head-to-head matchups that caught my eye, and you can go through all the matchups that you want and plug in any two players. It's available on dfsondemand.com. There's a head-to-head matchup tool that I'll be showing you on the video right now. But a couple that caught my eye. As I was scrolling through my book, I saw there was a matchup between Dustin Johnson and Justin Thomas, and it had DJ at minus 155 and Justin Thomas at plus 120. And that to me, I was like, that can't be right, can it? Like that number's just too far off. So I went and I plugged it into the head-to-head matchup tool, and what pumped out was Dustin's true money line should probably be closer to 139, minus 139. And JT should probably be like plus 139. So Dustin Johnson wins a 4-round head-to-head matchup 58% of the time against Justin Thomas. That's what it's saying. Now, this is a perfect example. The reason I point this one out is because it's a perfect example of one not to bet. So the odds that you'd have to lay on Dustin Johnson at minus 155 are longer than what his true odds are. And the odds you get on Justin Thomas are not long enough. So neither of these guys ends up being a play because the book is taking too much vig on both sides of this. So I thought this was really interesting that I was able to get a matchup that books had as spread as far out as they did between each other, and I wasn't able to find a bet on it. But that's kind of what this head-to-head tool helps me identify. Now, one that I did find a little bit of a bet on was interesting is Abraham Answer versus Rory Sabatini. So Bovada has this as what would be even money for them, right? Which is both sides are minus 115, the full vig on it. But what I have this as, and Answer only gets to this number, only gets to even money or a coin flip because of last week's Northern Trust. If you're looking at the head-to-head tool right now that I'm showing on the screen, Answer pops off. Answer played well at the Northern Trust. He played well at the Travelers. He played well at the PGA Championship. He has lost strokes total and just hasn't played well in 6 of the last other 10 weeks. Sabatini, however, has played great for the most part up until last week. So this is really just a recency bias. When you go back and look at even just any other longer term period, Sabatini kind of beats the pants off of Abraham Answer. I have this at being a 66% probability, which is a massive number in these heads ups, that Sabatini wins this. He should be about minus 194. So this would be a bet on Sabatini versus Abraham Answer in this 4-round matchup. And you see why the books moved to Answer after last week and move off of Sabatini. But if you open up the window any length of time longer, and assume both of these guys are going to go back towards their averages just a bit, like Sabatini's not going to play as bad as he did last week, and Answer is not going to play as well as he did last week, this starts to lean heavily in the favor of Rory Sabatini. All right, there you go. If you want to plug in any more matchups, head to DFS On Demand. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, tweet me. It's at RickRunGood or leave a comment below. Talk to you guys soon. Later.